It's time for another edition of Lewis at Large, 60 minutes of smart talk radio featuring guests from all walks of life in conversation with your host, Warner Lewis. So sit back and lend us your ears for the next hour. Now here with today's first guest is the host of Lewis at Large, Warner Lewis.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis, from the flight deck. And of course, that means some smart talk radio is indeed in your future in this segment. It's going to be a good one. We're going to be talking to Paul Cardall. And who is Paul Cardall? He is an internationally acclaimed pianist with an extraordinary story, not only of talent and drive, but also of survival and giving back to those he cares about. And an interesting story indeed. Boy, what a bungled introduction here. But again, Paul, I say this 2 or 3 times a year. There's nothing like a good introduction, and that was nothing like a good introduction. How are you, my friend?
Louis, it's fantastic to be with you. I'm doing really well.
You know, here's what I would like to do. Let's give you your due here. Share with our Lewis at Large listeners, if you would. First of all, talk to us about what led you to the piano, and then take us up to that life-changing event for you.
Sure. Like most kids, I took piano lessons. I did not like piano lessons, but so I quit as a teenager. Unfortunately, a friend of mine passed away. He was a musician, and that led me into my parents' living room. And I sat down at the piano, and as I started to play, just one note here, one note there, I wasn't very good. As I hit one note, all of a sudden I felt this like peace. And eventually, after like 2 or 3 days, I wrote my first song. And I played it for his family, and just the reaction from his father, who was, kind of a tough guy, but he was very emotional about it. And he said, "You've got to write more songs for other people." And that's kind of where it spurred. Was I began writing just songs 2 to 3 hours a day, and it evolved into a career. Since that time, I've released 13 studio albums. We've got a #1 Billboard record, and people all over the world are listening to this soothing piano music that I've been fortunate to create. I was born with a very unusual circumstance. I was born with half a heart. It's called congenital heart disease, and there's about 1 million kids born every year with this. And even though it's the #1 birth defect, it's one of the least funded of all the major defects. Well, five years ago, I know this is a lot to swallow, but 5 years ago, I had a heart transplant. That was the culminating event of a life, my life of having a defective heart. I've had numerous surgeries throughout my life. But 5 years ago, I had the heart transplant. It was before that I went into heart failure, and I wasn't able to gig. I wasn't able to record music, and my fans were like, "What's going on?" And that's when I let them know that I had congenital heart disease and that I was in heart failure. I waited 385 days on the organ donor list, and finally I was able to get a heart transplant. But I meet so many families who have children with a defective heart, and I get 2 to 3 emails a week from a mother or a father or a grandparent telling me about their child that's passed away, and I'm just really tired of seeing us not succeed as we should with something that I've survived from. And so I created this new album called Saving Tiny Hearts, and it's a collection of some of my best music that's, I guess, my most popular stuff over the last 15 years, and compile it onto one CD, and we're giving all my royalties to an organization, the most effective organization, called Saving Tiny Hearts. And what they do is they seed grassroots medical research. So instead of necessarily buying tissues for families, they're solving the problems. They're creating better surgery. They're creating medical devices that will, solve problems. I guess, for example, when I was 14 years old, I was going through some severe heart failure. I had an infection and the doctors could not find the source of the infection. They were treating me with all kinds of antibiotics, but they could not figure it out. And this was a huge trial for my family. I was in the hospital for 3 weeks. I was dying. And then the doctor said, well, listen, there's a brand new device. It was medically researched. It was put together. It was invented. And now we have one here in Salt Lake City, where I'm from. Let's go get you into this device. It's called an MRI.
Wow.
Gosh, an MRI is everywhere now. But back then, it took organizations like Saving Tiny Hearts to create the interest and the need and the funding to do that. So by selling this album, if I say, for example, there's $1 that's seeded, $1 could be $1,000 because it's matched by the National Institute of Health in multiple ways.
Paul, when you and again, you have lived with this condition your entire life. I'm curious as to being a pianist. The good news there is rarely is there much heavy lifting, and while I know it is intense and can be incredibly stressful from time to time, it wasn't like playing baseball or basketball where you were genuinely limited in your ability to do it. Did it kind of feed onto itself that I've got some limitations as a result of what I was born with, and so therefore the piano fits quite nicely?
I think that's the way my brain worked. Was it fueled all the creative gifts that I had inside me to do sports like my brothers and sisters. I was instead at the piano and moving my hands, pretty quick and just doing all I can to. But I loved it. I wasn't one of these kids that couldn't stand to sit at the piano and play for a half hour. This was my Xbox. This was my gaming that most kids, obsessively do. I was constantly creating songs and having a heart defect and going through surgeries, being faced with, maybe I'm not going to survive, and at a young age being told, you're not going to live very long. Those are deep emotions that, because I experienced those, I think that's why the music is touching so many people cross borders, is because everybody is dealing with challenges, and this music seems to just heal people, not in a holistic way, but just in a natural, common sense, down-to-earth way. For example, I got an email from a soldier in Afghanistan and telling me that he was listening to my music, and I thought, gosh, this big, tough guy over there listening to piano music, I wonder if his buddies are giving him a hard time. But he said that he was dealing with some severe anxiety being out there in the everyday situation of the war, and he just was struggling when he got back to base, to reality, to seeing pictures of his kids, just the ironic world that we live in of the war and yet the peace, and he just could not seem to get some sleep. He couldn't seem to relax, and he said he heard one of my songs on Pandora radio called Sweet Escape, and it just cleared his mind.
Paul, what about, and again, if you just joined us, yours truly, Warner Lewis here from the flight deck of Lewis at Large Radio, a special guest this segment, Paul Cardall. Paul is an award-winning pianist, got an album #1 on the Billboard charts. He has dedicated his creative juices and much of his energy to helping those with a condition that he suffers from himself, congenital heart disease. It has affected him throughout his life, although, as we're finding out in this discussion, in a very, very positive way. Paul, as you do a lot of traveling, you travel across the country, you travel around the world. Undoubtedly, people are coming up to you and communicating with you, hey, we share this same condition. I'd be curious to hear what you have to say about that.
I just did a performance in London, in Hyde Park, and there was a family from Germany that got in their car and drove 13 to 15 hours they brought their little girl who has a congenital heart defect. She's had numerous surgeries, and yet they come because they see someone like me who's an adult who's, living my dreams. I grew up. I fell in love. I've got a family. These are the things that parents want for their own kids, and it can happen. It is a reality, and I think all of us, what we need to do in our personal lives is we need to take control of our own health care, make sure that we are shopping the best care. And, for example, I had a doctor that was not giving me the best advice, but he was the only expert in town. But I needed to challenge that because I didn't want to just rely on what he was saying. I needed to ask other doctors what their opinion was so that I could get, the best care. If you're going to go buy a car, you don't just go and buy the first car that the guy wants you to buy because he says it's the best for you. You got to go to a couple of different dealerships. And likewise, these families, they come, they see that I'm healthy, they find out, listen, I've taken control over my medical care my whole life. My parents were they asked a lot of questions. They made sure that the best care was there and available. And so I think that's real key for a lot of families. But with the Saving Tiny Heart Society, we're making such a strident effort with more surgeries that are more effective. So even in the circumstances where there's no understanding, at least the education in the congenital heart disease medical field is getting there because of some of the other things we're doing.
What about, I'm just curious, you've heard from the general public. Are there others that are, we'll just loosely refer to them as celebrities or at least high-profile people that have also, you've had some communication with on this very issue of congenital heart disease?
Brett Baer from Fox News has a son with congenital heart disease, and we became friends over that. He saw that I was living a wonderful life, and he wants that for his own son. And but he's a fan of the music, anyways. And when they were in the situation of their son having to go into the hospital for more surgery, they put on the album New Life that I'd created, and he just mentioned that it had brought so much peace before they went into this dramatic situation that listening to the music calmed them down, and they were able to go in there with more hope and faith.
Well, Paul, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but let's tell us a little bit about the foundation, the work that it does, and sort of what the end game is there.
So Saving Tiny Hearts Society comprises a medical board of 200 congenital heart disease experts. There's no overhead, there's no employees, it's all volunteers. It was started by a family in Chicago who had a son, and born with heart problems, and they want the kid to survive. And so they very much, if you're familiar with the book Lorenzo's Oil, they have gone to task to make sure that all the best medical care is available. So really what they're doing is they're asking the individual doctors, what research do we need to have done to make sure these kids have better care, prolonged life, and better surgery? And so they're getting the doctor's input rather than, the corporate, market. So these doctors are submitting applications for grants that they want funded federally, and then we seed their application. And so seeding them, $100,000 could end up being a $10 million project. For example, some of the doctors are trying to regrow a human heart. And what that would do is, for example, I got a heart transplant, but what if I get a heart transplant with my own DNA, where we grew the heart? Because if I have somebody else's DNA in me, it fights it like a virus, so I have to take immunosuppressants. But if it was my own DNA, it would never fight it, and I could live pretty much like anybody else, a very long time.
Yeah.
But in my case, it's limited to 15 to 20, 25 years, and then you got to get another one.
Yeah. Is the focus necessarily on younger people, or is this something really looking to benefit everybody?
It benefits everybody because the research we do for the kids is actually beneficial for the adults. I got the same care that these kids get, and I guess we start by, heart surgery in general started with children, and it ended up helping everybody else.
What about, and again, you're the ability that you have because of the stature that you have in the music community, therefore you have fans around the world, you have the ability to connect and communicate. Do you feel like you have necessarily a sense of responsibility here? I mean, you've taken up this banner completely on your own for a lot of obvious reasons, but I'm just curious as to what, as you look down the road to the future, what's the future hold for you?
I'm very optimistic about the future. I am married to an amazing woman who shares that same passion for life. But I am grateful to be alive, and I wouldn't trade the experiences I've gone through for anything because they've shaped me into who I am. We have to, as C.S. Lewis always would say, we can't really understand pure joy and happiness until we experience a lot of pain. And having gone through the challenges that I've gone through, not necessarily me worrying about my own suffering, but me thinking, gosh, I've got a little girl, and if I'm not around for her, that's the drive to survive, is for those people that I love and the people that care about me. And so there's this passion that every day is so important, every minute of every hour of every week. This life is so fragile. There's a lot in the news right now about another illness, and it's just a reminder that we just need to make sure that we are enjoying each moment and not allowing ourselves to get too caught in trying to swim upstream all the time.
What about, let's talk about recording, touring for you, the music side of you. Again, we've got some new works in process. Tell us about those.
So Saving Tiny Hearts, the album, that's going to be released November 11th. It'll be available wherever you like to buy music, online, iTunes, Amazon, wherever you like to go. But that project is 15 of some of my best material. It's piano, it's orchestrated, it's very light, it's just kind of soothing. In the past, I've scored some music for a couple films, but mainly I just do these albums that kind of have these themes. So pretty much it's 1 hour of just pure relaxation and brings just a lot of peace into the home.
Paul, do you find that, and again, you're busy with lots of things here, but is touring for you, is that a tough thing physically for you, or is it okay?
No, because once I got the heart, I felt like a little kid again, ironically. The way I used to feel was like this beat-up old truck that Grandpa kept in the backyard or something. And I was driving that truck for so long, and then with the transplant, it was like they took me to this dump where we had to get rid of the truck, and they handed me the keys to a Porsche. And so not only do I have renewed energy, but, excitement that I made it, that I survived.
Well, it is a fascinating story. It is an ongoing story. An incredible artist, Paul Cardall, an incredible pianist, well-known around the world, and sales to prove it. And yet, at the same time, using his own unique situation of being born with congenital heart disease, has now created the Paul Cardall Family Foundation. There are also college scholarships available. Paul, let's do this. Let's share with our Lewis at Large listeners a couple things. Number one, remind us again when the new work is coming out and how they can get a copy of that. And two, how can they find out more about you and the foundation?
The new album, Saving Tiny Hearts, available November 11th. You can actually pre-order right now on iTunes. You can also do it at Amazon. And then if you want more information about where I'm performing or just directly more insight, you can go to my website, paulcardall.com. It's PaulCardall.com. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter and all those social networks. So just Google it and get you more information about the congenital heart disease and the music in general.
Well, I do. Thank you so much for spending some time with us here today and sharing with us not only your story, which hopefully will also inspire some others, and in particular those that may also be dealing with some of the same issues you've dealt with for many, many years. And best of luck with the new project, and best of luck with the foundation. And again, thanks so much.
Thanks, Lewis. God bless you.
You bet. We will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.